Hello, I'm Joseph Giunta, the music director and conductor of the Des Moines Symphony. Thank you for joining me today in the DMSO Listening Room, a part of our DMSO at Home series. Last time, I introduced composer Gustav Mahler. Today, I'll talk about his first two symphonies. Mahler's symphonies fall into groups on shared material. The first group include 4 symphonies that are based on songs Mahler wrote himself, and numbers 2, 3, and 4 actually use voices. His first symphony, nicknamed the Titan, was written between 1886 and 1888, followed by several revisions. Like all of his symphonies, it's scored for a very large orchestra and lasts about an hour. The premiere took place in Budapest in 1889 and was met with bewilderment and opposition. Mahler never really understood why his music created such animosity. He described the opening of the first movement like the sound of nature. This 7-octave A natural must have been inspired by one of his boyhood walks through the forest. Like Beethoven, he uses very little material, but eventually all these little bits gradually become something quite extraordinary. The detail of each second of sound is carefully planned out. Special attention is given to dynamics, including instructions for an offstage trumpet to play as far away in the distance as possible. The sound of a cuckoo appears, singing the interval of a fourth, and this eventually becomes the beginning of a walking theme. The pacing is perfect, and spring bursts forth in the most stunning tone painting since Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony. Next comes a dance-like scherzo that sounds part drinking song, part rustic waltz with a little bit of defiance. There is some good alpine foot stomping and sustained level of energy in this movement. The trio sounds like something he might have snapped up in a frequently visited Viennese cafe, nonchalant and quite carefree. The third movement was the one that confused audiences the most. The music is really grotesque, with a macabre version of Frère Jacques, a funeral march, and some distorted dance band music played by 2 trumpets, 2 oboes, and a bass drum and cymbals. Could this be reminiscent of what he overheard echoing from the town square during a funeral, or even the sounds of drunkards in his father's tavern when he was a youth? The last movement opens with a loud thunderclap and is filled with virtuoso writing and tension, culminating in a powerful conclusion. At the end, he asks the horns to raise their bells up for more sound. He also directs the entire brass section to stand. It's a stunning effect, both musically and visually, and one feels spirit has triumphed over tragedy. I have conducted this symphony more than any of his others, and it is always a profound and overwhelming experience to stand in front of and receive all this sound. I consider it one of the great symphonies of all time. During my years at Northwestern University, I studied orchestration with one of my favorite music professors, Anthony Donato. He was an outstanding teacher, composer, and conductor. He frequently referred to a handful of symphonies as apocalyptic. Titled The Resurrection, Mahler's second was one of them. The work calls for a huge number of performers, including an oversized orchestra, a chorus, and soprano and mezzo soloists. The work has 5 movements, with the 4th movement acting like an introduction for the finale. A performance lasts almost 90 minutes and is typically the only piece on a program. The first movement depicts loss and is heavy with grief and sadness. Its opening sounds truly tragic, with the lower strings conjuring the image of standing at the grave of a loved one. It's reminiscent of Beethoven's Funeral March in his Eroica. There's a glimmer of hope, briefly sounded as one of the themes returns in a major key. The second and third movements seem more like intermezzos to me, not so much distant from the opening and closing movements, but more reflective and transitory. The slow movement in A-flat major is calm and soothing, a welcome mood after the lengthy and angst-ridden first movement. Its reflective and gentle dance-like material is from a different place and time. It was during this movement that Debussy walked out on a performance he attended, claiming later that this was inappropriate music and sounded too much like Schubert. The third movement is a scherzo, and again grotesque and sinister, lyric, humorous, and even solemn. The strings often sing above the persistent brass and wind writing, which are adversarial in nature. But it ends quietly and leads us into the peaceful and meaningful 4-minute fourth movement. The Irrlicht, or Primeval Light, features a gorgeous song for mezzo-soprano in D-flat major. The words are from Mahler's own folk song collection, Das Knabenwunderhorn, the boy's magic horn. There is a simplicity and freedom in this music, a naturalness to the language he makes possible by 21 meter changes in 27 measures. It is chamber music at its finest. The final words give me chills every time I hear them. Dear God will give me a light, will light me to eternal blessed life. Calmness descends upon every listener, and then, as in Beethoven's Ninth, the solitude is shattered suddenly by the terror of the last movement. Waking the dead as if the world just exploded. There's a lengthy dies irae, a march of judgment, purposeful and thick with tension of trumpet fanfares and full-out chorales. Finally, the horns and trumpets overtake the destruction, playing loudly but offstage, as if from a great distance. A bird sings sadly in a confused and soulful way, and then silence. From this silence emerges human voices singing a theme of resurrection unlike any other. And in one of the greatest moments in all of music history, the soprano enters. When she sings the word grief, meaning called, she soars above the orchestra like a lost bird that has found its way. Mahler struggled with choosing a text of proper profundity for the finale of this work. Then, sitting at the funeral of his dear friend and colleague Hans von Bülow in 1894, the church choir sang a resurrection hymn with text by 18th century poet Klopstock. Mahler later wrote, "It struck me like lightning. Everything was revealed to my soul plain and clear." Mahler took the first two stanzas of Klopstock's poem and added his own verses to them. Reference to pain and death are given to the two female soloists. The chorus joins with hushed words, Auferstehen, ja, auferstehen. Wirst du. Rise again, yes, you will rise again. After a sublime and profound message, we hear these words again. This time, in full regalia and triumph, closing the symphony with church bells and breathtaking fanfares. That's it for today's Listening Room. Don't forget to go to our website, dmsymphony.org, where you can find listening links to some of the music I spoke about today, right after this video. You'll also find more content in our hashtag DMSO at Home series, featuring self-produced videos by our musicians from their homes to yours. Next time, I'll talk about Gustav Mahler's 3rd and 4th symphonies. Thanks for watching.